Daf Yud Tes Amud Beis. We're studying now the sheet of Rav, that if the Edom are incapable of signing their own names on the get, then the eitz is going to be that we make incisions. That's called mekarin with an ayin, mekarin into the near that's chalak, and they will fill in those empty spaces. Tanya Kavose de Rav, we have a brisa to support Rav. Edom shein yodim lachtom mekarin lehem near chalak u'memalen es hakroim dio, and the Edom will fill up the crevices with dio. We're only going to allow for this leniency with regard to Gittin Noshim, where we said there's a factor called igun. Now I'm going to skip a word here just for pedagogic purposes. Im yodim lachtom chosmim v'lav ein chosmim. In Gittin Avodim, star shikra avodim, and for sure in other stars, we're not going to allow for this kula, because basically we do not see the unique signature of these Edom. They're only filling in the kroy. So if at some point there's going to be some question as to whether the Edom did or did not sign the get, it's almost impossible to verify their signature. So this is a special kula, says Reb Shimon Gamliel, in get because of agun. However, notice that I skipped one word. Im yodim likros v'lachto. It seems that Reb Shimon Gamliel added another condition. It's not sufficient that the Edom know how to write their names. They also have to know how to read that which is in the shtar. Which basically means, the Gemara is going to analyze this, that who's going to read to them before they sign the shtar, the content of the shtar? So the Gemara asks, Kriya man karshmei. Nobody mentioned anything about Kriya. All our discussion was about Chasima. Now Reb Shimon Gamliel adds another condition, that the Edom have to know how to read it. The we will read the get or the shtar in their presence. Again, who the we is, I'm not sure, whether it's one aid or two aid. And then they can sign it. Sheinim yodim lachtom, on Reb Shimon Lakish, on Reb Shimon Gamliel, but medvar amurim, we can be machtim Edom who don't know neither how to read nor how to sign. Dafka begite noshim avol shukreim v'sharkos shtaros im yodim likos v'lachtom. If we have both conditions, chosmin v'vlavein chosmin. So Rabbi Loza, my time with Rav Shimon Gamliel, why is he makil and get where he's not willing to be makil in other shtaros if the Edom don't know how to read or how to sign their names? Shelo yibnos Yisrael agunos, as we said over and over again, because till we find other Edom who know how to read or how to sign, maybe the Baal will go to China and this woman will remain anakud. So this is a special kula for Gittin Noshim as Takana B'nos Yisrael. Omar Rav Halacha Ki Reb Shimon Gamliel. That means that in Shtar Shtaros, with the exception of get, you can't be machtim to Edom who don't know how to read the shtar and don't know how to sign the names. We have another tradition, again attributed to Rava, that we don't paskin like Rav Shimon ben Gamliel, and that means that we can be makil even in shar shtaros. Let someone else read the shtar, and we'll set it up with kroim, or any of the other eitzes so that they can sign the shtar. And now the Gemara clarifies Rav Gamda. The Elakiman, which shita in the machlokes of the Rabbanan Reb Shimon Gamliel does Rav Gamda accept? Kirabbanan, shall we say that he accepted the shita of the Rabbanan? and they were the ones who were machshir. They validated the Edom who don't know how to read or sign in all shtaros. For who the Ovid Uvda B'Shar Shtaros v'Nagdi Rav Kahana, we said that the halach is not like the Chachamim. In Shar Shtaros, Rav Kahana already paskin that we don't accept the various eitzos to get the Edom signed on the shtar. And according to Rav Gamda, if we understand that he's going to Kirabanan, then Rav Kahana had no right to beat up this guy because the halach is always Kedivei Chachamim, and you're allowed to sign in that way with all the eitzos that we gave, if they don't know how to sign on Shar Shtaros. And therefore the Gemara answers, Targuma Akriya. What Rav Gamda was saying, that halacha is like Chachamim, that are machshir in all shtaros, and we saw that Rav Kahana did not allow the chasima through the various eitzos that we suggested. Rav Gamda was referring to kriya. The Edom don't know how to read the get. They do know how to sign the get, they just don't know how to read the get. And even though Rav Shimon Gamliel requires that they know how to read the get in Shtar Shtaros, but nevertheless, we're going to accept the sheet of the Chachamim that others could read in front of them, and then they will proceed to sign their name, attach their signatures. But if the Edom don't know how to sign the get, the halach is like Rav Shimon Gamliel, as we saw from Rav Kahana. Rav Yehuda mitztayr. Rav Yehuda was getting blind, Nebuch. He was an older person. And when he had to sign as a witness or as a dayan, he would be mitztayr. What does mitztayr mean? He pushed himself. Vikari. And he would try to read the get on his own, the shtar on his own. V'chasim, and then he would sign. Amalei ula lo tzriches. Why are you being mitztayr yourself? Why are you pushing yourself with such hitam tzud to read the shtar on your own? Rabbi Loza married to Eretz Yisrael and Kari Kamei v'chasin. Rabbi Loza, who's like the Gadol Ador in Eretz Yisrael, the Adon shel Eretz Yisrael, the Gadol Mikulam, and yet he would allow others to read the shtar before he signed it. So why do you have to go beyond Rabbi Loza? By the way, why is Rabbi Yehuda? I'm sorry. Why is Rabbi Loza called the Morad Eretz Yisrael? The Gemara tells us because he was the expert in Maros Damim for Dam Nida. He was the Baki b'Maros Dam, above and beyond all Chachmei Eretz Yisrael. Rab Nachman, and even Rab Nachman, who was a dayan, and he was appointed by the Rosh Gola, and he was the chassan of the Nasi, Karkame Sifrei Dayani v'chassan. The Sofrei Bezdin would read in his presence the shtar, and then he would sign the shtar. He didn't read the shtar or overtax himself to read the shtar. However, this kula of Nachman is going to be very severely restricted. We're talking about a case of a Gadol b'Yisrael, and the Safrei Dayanim were sittering. They were literally afraid of Rav Nachman. V'dafka Rav Nachman could sign and rely on the Safrei Dayanim that they gave him an accurate reading of the contents of the shtar, and v'safrei dayanim, these were professional sofrim that were hired by the bezdin. They were paid a salary, and in such a case, Rav Nachman was mekil, and he would sign the shtar based on their reading the islu a masa. They are afraid. The sofrei bezdin are afraid of someone as great as Rav Nachman, and they're not going to change the kriya. Somebody later on will read and see that they misled Rav Nachman. They'll be in deep trouble. Avol Rav Nachman, The Safri Achrini or Safri Achrini, Vinci Achrini lo. If it was not Rav Nachman, but other Sofrim that were not the Sofrim that were hired by the Beis Din of Rav Nachman, we're going to read it. Or if these are the Sofrim, but it's not Rav Nachman, then we would not allow the Sofrim to read the shtar and have the Eidim sign on the shtar. We said that a shtar parsa is a valid shtar, the Ovid Biarchos Shal Kusim, and therefore the shtar itself is valid, but the only problem is that the Eidim signed on the shtar are Goyim. And what would Rav Papa do with such a shtar? He didn't read or understand Persian. Is mikri lahu l'shnei kusim zeh shelo b'fnei zev v'meisiach l'fitum. He would have two kusim. The kusim were experts at Persian, and they could read, but he would make sure that each kusi, who's considered a guy, would read independent of the other one, and then he would listen carefully and hear, is there any discrepancy between the two readings? And that's called Masechet Lefi Tumo. Papa didn't explain to these two kusim who are readers why he wanted each one to read on his own, not in the presence of the other. And not only did Rav Papa validate this shtar, but it even had the laws of a shtar that require a kol. Kol means public knowledge, in order to be govim mishabde. So if the land of, let's say, the lova in this case, was sold to a buyer, that land has a lien on it. And that lien is a result of the fact that the malva is holding on to a shtar parsa. Umagvive even in mishabde. So basically, this is the status of a milvak suva b'shtar, and even if it's a shtar parsium signed by goyim, it still has the status of a milvak suva b'shtar. Amar Rav Ashi Amali Huna bar Rav Huna bar Nosan Hachi Amar Ameimar. Hai shtora parsa de chasime alei sahadi Yisrael magbina be mishabde v'holo yadi lemikri b'diyad. So we have here a tradition that dates back all the way to Ameimar, that if you have a shtar that's written in Persian, the actual writing was done by Jews, and the signing of the shtar was by Jews. We can use that to collect. It's a milvak suva v'shtar, even mishabde. And the Gemara asks for lo yada lemikri. The Eidim don't know how to read Parsis. They don't understand the word of Parsis. How could they sign in the shtar without reading it? And b'diyade. We were referring to specific scholarly Eidim who knew how to read Parsis. The Gemara now asks for be'ina ksav sheni yochel istayeh. We have a loch in shtaros that a shtar has to be written on a klaf she'ubad ba'afotzim, if you remember, and then it's impossible to be mezayich the shtar because anytime you erase it, you can see where the erasure was. The leka, but the klaf that was used by the Parsian was not a klaf that was me'ubad ba'afotzim. And the Gemara answers that when Ameimar was machshir, the shtar, it was bida afitzon. It was written on a klaf that was me'ubad b'afotzim. The Gemara continues to raise the following question: V'be'inon sorech lachzor mi'inyono shel shtar b'shita achrona v'leka. We have halach in our shtaros that at the end of the shtar there's a short summary of the main points of the shtar liel. And in the case of a shtar parsoim, certainly they're not interested in adding a shita achrona. And the Gemara says, the Mahadib, Ameimar was machshir a get, a shtar, that came from Parsiim, in the following conditions. So we have condition number one, it's written on a cloth that had afitzon, that had ibud afotzim. Number two, it's got to be that the Edom who signed the get know how to read Parsis. And number three, it's got to be that they were choser min yono shel shtar b'shitachron. So the Gemara asks, okay, if you fulfilled all the conditions necessary for a shtar, why did I need this whole tradition dating back to Meimar to tell me if the shtar is kosher? What was the havamina that it wouldn't be kosher? The chol lashon kosher, we know that any language is kosher for a get. And Tnina getchik sovo ivris v'edav yevanis v'edav ivris kosher. So you have here a Mishnah later on in Masechet Gittin on Pei Zayin, that if the get was written in Greek and the Edom signed it in Ivris, then the get is kosher. So you see, it's explicit that a get is kosher in any language. Why do I need a Meimar to be mechadish then? I would have thought Hadimili begittin, Amal b'shtar shtaros lo. That Mishnah appears in Masechet Gittin, and we know that there are kulos because of the takonas benos Yisrael shelo tiu agunos that we were mekil in Gittin. But in other shtaros, who says that we're going to be mekil if the shtar is written in another language called mashmallah? And that's what Abbeima wanted to be mechadesh, that even in shtaros, you could write the shtar in any language. Omer Shmuel. Nosan lo niyar chalak v'yomer la reza gitech megureshes chayshinon shema b'mei milin ksava. Mei milin is otherwise known as mei afotzim, and those are kosher to write a get. But after a certain period of time, the mei milin gets absorbed into the klaf, into the niyar, and it's not nikar. But the Baal said, Areza Gitech. Apparently, there were two Edom who heard him say, Areza Gitech. And therefore, we assume that even though now it's invisible, but nevertheless, it was visible at the time that he gave the get. The Baal gave his wife a get in the presence of two Edom, and he said, Areza Gitech. Nitlaso, she took the get, so across Al Yam, she destroyed it. La'or, l'chol davar ovid. Lazar v'yamar shtar pasim hu shtar amanu is megoreshes v'lo v'lav kol hemini lios. So we're now talking about a case of a get that was written b'ksav. And even though the get is gone, but since the Edom heard the Baal say to her, Hareze Gitech, and the get is written b'ksav, therefore, the Baal is not nemon to passel the get and say it was a shtar parsium, right, which is a shtar that was written piasti liovai, sheyichtov li, many emos. The guy wants to show himself to be a rich guy, so he gets two buddies of him to write a shtar that says that so and so borrowed $1,000 from him, so he's a rich guy. Or shtar mona means the lova had the shtar written and he's holding on to it in event that he'll borrow the money. Those are shtaros psulim. And in all these cases, the woman is considered megureshes. Why? Because the Baal said, Areza Gitech. And these are cases where there is a ksav, taibadik ksav, holek ksav. If we don't know that it was a davar that is royal ksav, lo, we're not going to say that the woman is megureshes. So the Tana wanted to be mecharish us that even though the get was not read before the Nesina, but since it's got a ksav, nevertheless, the Baal said it was a get, and he can't nullify the get. And the chazak is that the shtar is a get. But if the din was that even if we don't know that there was a ksav in the shtar, she's megureshes, the time of the Brisa should have told me a bigger chiddush, that even in a case where nasan lo niyar chalak, nevertheless, since he said areat megureshes, harei zegiteich, therefore he cannot question the validity of the get. So the Brisa should have told me a bigger chiddush, namely that even if it's written on niyar chalak, which means that we don't know that there was a ksav of the get, nevertheless, the words of the Baal, harei zegiteich, are enough to substantiate that it is a valid get. More answers, Kikamar Shmuel, when does Shmuel say that even niyar chalak is kosher? That's a case of dibat kinale. There's a scientific test, a lab test that we could do to subject the get, and we could see that ksav that is now invisible. We could see it. B'maya denora. Okay, it's a certain kind of a dye, of a liquid dye, and when you sort of wipe that dye over the niyar, then all of a sudden the niyar is polate. It vomits forth, so to speak, the dio that was nivla, that was absorbed inside the cloth. So the Gemara again asks the following question: E polit, polit. If you subjected the get to that test, that scientific test, and as a result, the ksav appears, then for sure she's megureshes. He gave her a get, and it was a kosher get. Elo polit. If on the other hand, we don't see the ksav on the niyar, then he didn't give her a get. She's not megureshes. So Gemara asks, "V'chi polit my havi, hashtu the polit." Maybe the time he gave her the get, the ksav was invisible, and with the passage of time, he was able to, through this lab test, was able to get the ksav to appear again. But how do we know at the time of the get the ksav appears? Invisible ksav is not a get. It doesn't have a ksav. And could Shmuel be mater and Eishes Ish based on the fact that now we're able to get the cloth to vomit forth its dio? Maybe at the time that he gave the get, it was invisible. And Shmuel nami chayshin, Shmuel was not paskening that we were allowing her to get married, but rather that there's a suffix. Maybe at the time that he gave her the get, it was before nivla ha'osios, and therefore the rishum was nikar, and therefore it's a ksav, and maybe the Edom didn't see it at that time, and therefore she's not allowed to get married to another person without a get to replace this one, and if her husband dies, she's not allowed to marry a Kohen, because maybe this is a get. So that's basically, anytime you hear in the Gemara, we'll have it throughout the Masechta, Safek Megureshes, what it means is two things. Number one, she cannot marry another man, but number two, she can never marry a Kohen, even if her husband died. Amar Avinu Amar Meimar, Hachi Amar Mereimar, Mishmei Derav Dimi, Hani Beitrei, the Yoav Gita Kamayu Tzricha Lemikre. The two Eidim who are witnesses to the giving of the get have to be able to read the get before it was given. Meisvei, we're going to ask a kasha on Rab Dimi from a Brisa. If the Baal gave the get to his wife and he said, "Arei zegiteich," unitalasa uzrakta liyamo or ola or olachol davra avi. Lazar miyamar shtar pasimu o shtar amonu migoreshes below kaimini liosra. The iyam etzrichi lemikre. If in fact Rav Dimi held that the Edom have to read the get before it's given over to the Isha, Basa de Karyu mi motzi amalehachi. After the Edom read the get, is it possible for the Baal to be toeing that he wrote a Shtar Parsim, or he wrote a Shtar Pasim, or a Shtar Amona? The Eidim saw that it's a get. No, when did the Bryce have to teach me this chiddush that the Baal's not believed that he gave her a Shtar Piyusim or a Shtar Amona? That's only the Basa de Karyua. If the Eidim read the get before it was delivered, then for sure the Baal has no possible taina of Shtar Piyusim, etc. And the Brisa would not have to teach me that the get is kosher and we disregard the argument of the Baal. But rather, when does the Brisa have to teach me this chiddush? That's after the Basa de Karyua. The Eidim read the get, and then what happened? The Baal took the get and he hid it into his garment. He put it in his pockets. The afke, then he took it out again and he handed it over to his wife. Then the get was immediately lost. And the Baal says it wasn't a get at all. It was a shtar piyusim, it was a shtar mona. So even though the Eidim read the get, and therefore how could the Baal be believed, even as a havamina, to say that it was a shtar piyusim or a shtar amona? Maybe in his pockets he had two different shtaros. And he took the get back after it was read by the Eidim, so we know it's a get, put it in his pocket, and he pulled out a different shtar. And therefore, maybe the shtar that he gave to the woman, which is now lost and destroyed, was really not a get at all. It was a shtar piyusim or a shtar amana. Mamash Malon, the Bryce has to teach us that we're not choshesh, we don't suspect that maybe he switched it in his pockets. And therefore he's not nemon, he's not believed to say that the shtar that I delivered to this Isha was a shtar pasim or a shtar amana, and she's meguresh. A man threw a get into the chotzer of his wife, and it fell between the barrels in the chotzer. Then they looked between the barrels, and they couldn't find the get. What did they find instead? Ishtakach mezuzta. They found the mezuzah. Omer Rav Nachman mezuzta beidaini lo shchichit. It's very unusual that anyone would throw a mezuzah between the barrels in a chotzer, and therefore not going to be choshesh that maybe he threw her a get and it got lost there, and therefore maybe should be a suffix megureshes. And here we're going to say she's a bade ain't a megureshes. In other words, we don't believe that there was another get besides the mezuzah. We believe that what we found was a mezuzah, and she's not megureshes. Says the Gemara, Hani milidish takachada. You only found one mezuzah. Avol shtayim oshos, you find two or three mezuzahs, and we see that the Baal threw some other cloth into her chotzer. So we're going to say midi avoy is hanami avoy v'gita emer akvei shaklua. Since he added mezuzos, extra mezuzos, and they fell between the chavios, and the Baal threw something else between the chavios, then we're going to say that hanami avoy, maybe what we're finding here is the original mezuzah, but perhaps he had thrown her a get. We don't find the get, all we find is mezuzahs. Maybe the creatures, the crawling creatures, took away the get. Hahu gavra the old beiknishti came to the Beis HaKnesses v'shakal sefer Torah yavla de Beisa. Amalo hagitech. Now wait a second. How could hagitech apply to a sefer Torah? Amar Rav Yosef l'may nechashla. If you're going to tell me that maybe he wrote her a get with me'afotzin on a cloth of a Sefer Torah, and it was on the outside of the Sefer Torah, And now we can't see the ksav, it's not nikar. And we said already on Daf Yud Testament Aleph that a get that was written on May Afatzim on a klaf she'ubad v'Mei Afatzim is possible. Ein Mei Milin al Gabi Mei Milin. You can't make a ksav of Mei Milim on top of Mei Milim. So why would there be a havamina to say that we should be choshish to this get? And now on Daf Chafi Mishum Krisus, the Ispa, now you tell me, wait a minute, not that he wrote with Mei Milin on the outside of the Sefer Torah, but there is a parsha of Sefer of Gerushin in Kitetze, but the Sefer Torah is written as a Sefer Torah and not as a get, so it's not written Lishma. And if you'll say Lechush, let's be Choshesh, Dilma Aktim v'Yoev leZuza l'Safra Meikara. Maybe before the Sofer wrote the Sefer Torah, he paid the Sefer Torah, the Sofer, to write the Parsha of Krisus in Kitetze l'Shem Gerushin of this particular woman. Mara says, no, we need Shemos. Ha'be'inan Shmo v'Shma Shem Ira v'Shem Iro v'Leka. So the Gemara asks, Rav Yosef Michael Mashmalon, what is he coming to teach me? Isn't it poshut that a woman cannot be miscarriage with the parsha of Krisus that's written in the Torah in Kitetze? It wasn't written L'Shem Gerushin, it doesn't have her name, his name, it doesn't have the Shem Ha'ir, Shem Ira. And the Gemara answers, Rav Yosef is coming to Mashmiya she'ein mei milin al gabi mei milin. If we don't see the ksav is not nikar, then even if he had written Mei Milin Agabi Mei Milin, it's not a valid get. Okay, so we're up to Amar Av Chizda, which Amir Hashem we will pick up tomorrow. Wishing you a great day.